Welcome, everyone. I'm Rodrigo Silva. I'm the Communications Manager at Cogitatio. Today, we turn our attention to a thematic issue that was published in our open access journal, Urban Planning, entitled Zero Energy Renovation, How to Get the Users Involved. I will share the link with you very soon on the chat. As stated by the editors of the issue, Tineke van der Schoor with us today and Fred Sanders, one of the most complex, urgent challenges in the energy transition today is the large-scale refurbishment of the existing housing stock in the built environment. In the next decades, all buildings should be upgraded to nearly zero energy structures, which brings up challenges like cost, improving technology, citizen involvement, etc. And to explore this goal and its challenges, we have set up a panel composed of Tineke van der Schoor, as I said, from the Hanze University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, Ermal Kapedani from the Hasselt University in Belgium, and Frans Coenen from the University of Twente in the Netherlands. We also have the pleasure of welcoming Haico van Nunen from the BouwhulpGroep in the Netherlands, today's discussant. Thank you all here for your presence today. Before we jump to the discussion, let me share with our attendees some information on how the webinar will proceed. So Tineke, as co-editor of the issue, will go first, contextualizing the issue a little bit, why it came up, the main conclusions of the articles and the collection as a whole. She will be followed by Ermal and then Frans. They will present as authors the main findings and the impact of their research. And then we will hear from Haico van Nunen regarding the collection and the articles. After that, we will jump to the Q&A session and discussion among our speakers. So to our attendees out there, you are able to write your questions using the Q&A format on the bottom of the screen. Feel free to write your questions throughout the whole session. We will be reading them to the speakers after Haico's presentation. Also, if you are on Twitter, do feel free to follow Urban Planning's page to keep in touch with our publications, our call for papers, the impact of our research on news outlets, policy briefs, etc. And without further delay, I would like to wish you all a very pleasant webinar and pass the word to Tineke van der Schoor. Thank you very much. If you can, Tineke, to unmute your microphone before. Yeah.
Thank you, Rodrigo, for this introduction. Let me first say that I'm very happy to present today the results of the special issue on energy renovation that Fred Sanders and myself started over a year ago. As a preparation for this issue, we organized several discussion sessions on energy renovation, engagement of homeowners and users, and reached out to invite researchers to share their work with us. We are very glad about the response we got, adding up to a full issue of 10 papers coming from different parts of the world. Let me now introduce some items that came up in this issue. Our main item is the participant-related factors in energy renovation. And the second item that is also prominent in many articles are the technical solutions. In this presentation, I will mainly highlight some of the participant-related factors. Zero energy renovation, how to get users involved. That is the title of the whole issue. And I will now discuss some of the themes that came up. As you see in the word cloud to the right of the sheet, I have highlighted several of these items that are prominent in this issue. The first is acceptance of energy interventions. Moses and colleagues investigated a series of buildings in Estonia, which underwent a drastic nearly zero energy renovation. Interesting, the prior values and prior opinions of the inhabitants were very influential on how they evaluated the later result of the retrofit. Thus, for the success of energy projects, it is important to apply a range of engagement methods to involve users. Secondly, I want to discuss the perspectives for action. Working with a community of knowledge, Sanders and Overtoom inventoried a large number of studies conducted outside universities. They identified several perspectives for action. For example, sustainable supply must be tailor-made because households differ and tenants behave differently from homeowners. They also stressed that decision-making about sustainable investment is not only based on financial factors. Residents are reluctant to become involved, so they also find it important that contractors are very reliable. Lastly, users want personalized plans and on-time delivery. So as you see, they have a lot of demands. Also, after the retrofit, the behavior of occupants is an important factor. Pellegrino et al. Start from the observation that there may be significant disparities between energy demand as calculated and the actual energy consumption after renovation. They argue that the behavior of occupants after renovation needs to be studied in more detail and analyzed two social housing projects in France and the Netherlands. Fourthly, improving comfort can be an important motivator for homeowners to consider energy renovation. In this issue, Oostra and Nelis present a study of the satisfaction of customers in several case studies in the Netherlands. They argue that owner-occupants usually adapt their homes in response to everyday concerns, such as having enough space available and increasing comfort levels. However, retrofit providers usually restrict their offer to energy efficiency and neglect the importance of comfort and homemaking. Then, for more important issues, the potential role of communities in engaging more users is investigated by Coenen and Hoppe. Apart from individual users, local communities might be an interesting new actor in stimulating home energy saving efforts and acceptance by tenants and homeowners. The article investigates what actions and measures can be applied to coach homeowners to achieve energy savings. The support of decision-making by homeowners is also flagged in an article by myself on renovation rates, on deep renovation in the EU. Renovation rates across the EU remain at a very low level of 1%. And of these, the deep renovation is only 0.2%. What could be done to remedy this is a better organization of the market, of the supply side, and they should support homeowners better to make decisions about renovation projects. This can, for example, be done in one-stop shops. User-centered design, again, the relation with users is also important on the technology side. New design approaches and collaboration are studied in several articles in this issue. For example, Boes analyzes several zero-energy renovations of social housing and of mixed ownership. She applies a design perspective, providing starting points for co-learning strategies that could improve outcomes. She presents two example strategies that could support professionals in the field, for example, using demo dwellings, and secondly, by the publication of a user manual in the early design phase. So these are both strategies to involve users. And lastly, I come to the role of values and value change. The involvement of users in renovation projects can be a source of value change in itself, as is shown by Baho and Vale in a study situated in New Zealand. They follow the renovation of an existing building into a near-zero demonstration facility, which will hopefully also inspire the local community to adopt pro-environmental practices. They demonstrate that getting involved in a sustainable building process can change the values of people through active and systemic learning, both in the building and operation phases. So I now have summarized 8 main themes of this issue, all connected to user involvement, which is, of course, our main issue. Some of these themes will be discussed also further in this webinar. For now, I thank you for your attention and I give the floor to the next speaker.
Thank you, Tineke, for this contextualization of the issue. Now the first author to present, Ermal Kapedani, please.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I'll just share the screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for your attention, for your time. I will basically be speaking about the comfort tool, which is a method that we presented in our paper for this issue, and which deals with the promotion and assessment, and as well as promotion of energy efficiency combined with universal design measures in home renovations. The general aim of our research was to effectively combine these two normally disparate fields to achieve renovation that is more sustainable, both economically, environmentally, but as well as physically and socially. The scope is also important, I think, to identify, because normally a lot of the studies deal with larger developments, housing associations or developers, professional developers, whereas when you're speaking about owner-occupied single-family homes, you're talking about single decision makers, which is a positive. You can have quick, easy decisions, but they're also unsophisticated in terms of knowledge or long-term planning, which they're not professionals at this, which means that in effect they're less likely to make rational decisions and to be driven more by, let's say, behavioral biases and standards, cultural norms, etc. And that was actually the starting point from of our analysis, was what Tineke already mentioned, that is a theme in the issue, is this idea that in effect people, when they renovate their homes, they care about more than just let's say energy or technical issues. They renovate to improve their overall comfort, and that also is very broadly defined. It's not the sort of thermal comfort that an engineer will be familiar of. That is part of it, but it's a lot more than that. And in effect, it's a critique on the sort of homo economicus perspective, techno-economic view of energy renovations and sustainable renovations in general, because that's effectively like focusing on just the economics. Is like selling the car loan instead of the car. And in effect, a car company doesn't even sell the car; they sell an aspiration. They sell something that's much greater than the object itself. And that's what we wanted to focus on: comfort as an aspirational objective towards a sustainable renovation, rather than approaching it from the, let's say, typical governmental or research perspective, which specifically focus on energy efficiency or universal design measures, which is not necessarily the language and the objective of the homeowners themselves. So we did, of course, the problem with talking about comfort is that what does it mean? It's a culturally well, it evolves over time and throughout cultures, and for different people is different things at different times. So defining that is always going to be a bit of a minefield, but we didn't see that as a problem. We saw that as actually part of its advantage, in the sense that it relates directly, the words itself relate directly to the person that you are speaking to, because in the end, you only have to convince one person, and that's the decision maker, which is the homeowner. And so the subjectivity of the word comfort is not an issue, but we still could identify several themes within it. We asked directly to various groups in a different research to try and come up with a framework of indoor environmental comfort. And we noticed that actually a lot of the themes that they talked about involved the same kind of things that we'd be talking about if we were talking about energy efficiency or lifelong living or universal design. The difference is that we're not talking about the measures, but we are talking about the outcomes. So we're talking about the outcome of the temperature and the light and the noise and the air quality, which would be normally something discussed in terms of technical items on energy efficiency. So that's how we try to make a definition of indoor environmental comfort within the scope of home renovation. And with those set of indicators, of themes or indicators, we basically try to build a tool to try to operationalize that idea. And the purpose of the tool was to have a kind of an assessment instrument that increased awareness, but also improved communication between homeowners and professionals. And this was done from a homeowner perspective. The idea is not to create a tool that you need a whole group of scientists or architects to use, experts to use, but it's something that can be used immediately and can be understood immediately by the homeowners themselves. And of course, the target group for such a tool would be the homeowners themselves and the professionals that could assist them to try and improve that communication between the two. Now, it's important to point out that the tool, so when you talk about comfort, you're talking about the incentives for renovation, not the barriers. So there's obviously cost can be a barrier, but that is not why people renovate. Because of cost. Cost is something that limits their renovation. So what we're talking about here is how to get people from not in a decision mode to go to this place of deciding the specifics. Then that's where the professional gets involved. But in between, you have a deciding what to do phase, which is where the comfort tool will be most useful. It's in trying to make people understand that their renovation can have multiple benefits outside of just a new energy efficient or lifelong living measure. And so the process in itself is based on several theoretical pillars that span several fields, in fact, but the process itself is quite simple. On the first step is to ask the person themselves of those 15 different indicators, themes that we have identified as part of comfort, as relating to comfort at home. Which one of these are important to you and how important they are? And then they can use the same indicators and rate their home performance on those indicators. So how well does the home, according to them, that's again a subjective individual experience, and how well the home performs on each of those indicators. And the combination of those two figures, it can be combined into what we call a comfort fit. So you effectively have the difference between what the house performs and what the person would like it to be. And that comfort fit is can lead to the difference between a comfort fit and the ideal comfort fit. The existence of the ideal comfort fit is where we have a potential for improvement. And that can, of course, then lead to the next phase to say, okay, well, if this is where I can improve, then I can gain more information on those issues, talk to experts about it, go through the renovation based on improving those specific items that I need in my home. And of course, this can also come back to the phase of rating the house after the renovation. So then you can actually compare between how well the house fit you or performed on certain items before renovation and how well it performed after the renovation. You can see what your new comfort fit is based on that work that you did. So all of this is presented in a kind of bar graph where you see in blue or green is the current comfort fit, and the yellow is what we call the improvement potential. So how far you could go based on how important this is to you and where you should be focusing your intentions, your renovation intentions. And in the end, again, where you can compare the improvement of the building after and before the renovation. And this way you can actually have a subjective understanding of how the renovation has impacted comfort of the inhabitants. We have already put this sort of in a mock-up, let's say, online as the comfort tool, both for renovation and for new builds, actually. But at the moment, it still needs more work. It can be used already to fill the knowledge gaps in energy efficiency and universal design regarding the people's preferences. It can be used. The tool itself can be optimized and can be done differently. What we did was we built an example of one operational example of what framework can look like, but it can have different forms for slightly different functions. And it can, of course, be used as a link between the renovators and architects, or to help the information from it can help to design different policy that are more focused towards comfort rather than specifically energy efficiency. And so we used it already to study some case study houses that were pilots for energy efficiency and universal design. We used it in education with design students. And also we collected some data from the tool online that was put online already for a year, and we analyzed the data. So we got an idea, basically what you can see on the Flemish case, because this was, the website was in Dutch, the Flemish preferences for comfort, what items are most important to Flemish, but then you also see how the homes perform relative to those same comforts. And in the end, more importantly, what we could find out was that what are the items that are the most, where you have the most improvement potential, where the people would in effect be more likely to invest into and start a renovation that then can lead to something that is more energy efficient or more universal design, or both. And you can see already from this that temperature, quality, and noise are at the top of that list, and so is maintenance, which is actually a usability of spaces, which are more sort of spatial and architectural aspects. So as I said, that's there's more work to be done on the tool, and we hope to move forward with it as time goes on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ermal, for your presentation. And now, Frans, Coenen. I'll just kindly ask you, Frans, to unmute your microphone when you start the presentation, just to make sure. Okay, Frans, we can see the PowerPoint. You can just start the presentation. Don't forget to unmute, exactly.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. Sorry, Rodrigo, I thought you were in the lead, you were going to unmute me, but...
sorry, no, okay, I can't do that.
I was waiting for that moment.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the article by myself and by my dear colleague Thomas Hoppe from Delft University about renewable energy communities as a potential new actor in home energy savings. What was the motivation, or the research motivation for this article, is that we try to present in this article actually a very particular mechanism of participation. and that's renewable energy communities. And we think that is particularly interesting for large-scale energy renovation projects. Now, very shortly, why is participation of citizens in energy and in the energy transition important? I think it's a mix of what the European Union wants in the energy transition, but also from the background of the more instrumental or functional participation. We know the importance of the local knowledge that people have, but we also know the effects of citizen participation on social acceptability, on the stimulating of the private investments, typically something that also the European Union wants, and also that the benefits of the energy transition actually flow to the citizens. Now, how do renewable energy communities come into that? And we give quite some attention to that in the article. So renewable energy communities are existing for quite some time, but now through mainly the Renewable Energy Directive, but also to Electricity Directive, have got a legal form that are transposed in most countries, which actually gives the opportunity to create communities with citizens as members. And they're very well known, of course, for producing energy as renewable energy cooperatives. But here we were talking about another type of renewable energy communities with another type of goal. And this goal could, for instance, be energy renovation in a project where the members of the energy community actually are, for instance, like the tenants in the project. Now, why renewable energy communities are an interesting new actor in this, although they might do things that are very similar to other agents in this type of processes. One, of course, is their social embeddedness. They have close ties to the community. They create social norms that are very important to actually perform large-scale energy renovation projects. There are definitely some aspects to the community that are an advantage. There's a critical mass for sharing knowledge. And if there is resistance to the project or even some form of NIMBY or etc., the literature shows that particular renewable energy communities have a big advantage here over other types of agents. And because there is this social embeddedness, because there is this membership, because there's this local inclusion, the trust and the social acceptance in this type of projects, if there are renewable energy communities involved, is higher. Okay, now how can renewable energy communities actually contribute to energy renovation projects? Now, one of the starting points that Tineke already mentioned is that tenants and house owners are a little bit like a not so well organized target group. It makes it difficult for other agents and policy to actually address them. And because we have to do with individual decisions and actions like households, energy saving intentions, their behavior, and eventually energy savings. And it's difficult to group to target. And we see energy communities as a possibility to actually organize and target this group much better. Now, the article builds on empirical data from an EU Horizontal 2020 project called Rescue Plus, which uses a mixed method, but particularly we did surveys among members of renewable energy communities in Europe on home energy saving. And from this work, we took some lessons to learn about the possibilities of using renewable energy communities in energy renovation projects. And actually, we first see three different streams of influence of these renewable energy communities on their members or other households. One, of course, is what actually already was mentioned, is that through the social structure and the norm that are related to energy community membership, people are influenced to show a certain energy saving behavior or a certain energy investment behavior. It's also the active engagements of households. So if renewable energy communities organize meetings, people might be more willing, more engaged to actually be there. And another important part that we put in the article are so-called specific and dedicated measures. This actually are, let's say, home energy savings methods addressed in very different ways, where the renewable energy community tries the members and also people outside of the memberships to raise awareness, to provide, for instance, education, to train households, advisors. in any way provide support for individual decisions or the acceptance of decisions in a project. And it's quite clear, of course, that many of the type of work that renewable energy communities are undertaking resembles a lot with other types of agents like housing cooperatives or municipalities or project owners, but given with a very specific starting point for this renewable energy communities. And we tried in the article to make a bit clear in how far they actually make a difference. So in how far do these renewable energy communities are capable of more effectively encouraging their members and other households to save energy. And then more effective, of course, it should be compared to potentially other agents. And what we did with the surveys, that we tried to open a little bit this process, this mechanism between the actions of the renewable energy communities and particularly their memberships. Now, very short about the results of this. Well, the results of the surveys in 6 countries among the members and compared with non-members shows that all 3 forms of engagements that I mentioned between members and the energy community actually contribute, but mostly actually the membership. So membership has a direct influence in the way that people are bound into this energy saving projects. But if we look at specific measures, as we explained in the article, it also shows that if people show home energy savings, it can only for a limited part be attributed to the energy community, which of course it's logical. It's not like there's a full causality, that the only thing that is there is what actually the renewable energy communities try to push on their members and on other. And also the article shows a bit more about specific energy actions and dedicated measures. We compare a bit with, we categorize them, and but we can show actually in the article that it's positively related to energy savings, but particular very integral projects with integrated measures that are both incident and consequence strategies seem to work in practice the best. Okay, thank you for your attention, and this were my 8 minutes.
Thank you, Frans, for your presentation. And now to know the remarks, to hear the comments and remarks by Haico van Nunen, please.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for all the speakers to your elaboration on these themes. I was glad to hear that this time within renovation, the occupants are in the center of all the activities and all the research that is going on. Because in the end, it's about the buildings that we are renovating and about the people who are living in those buildings. And I was glad to hear that with Ermal, with the way you look at people, how they can actually look at their homes. That gives you an advantage of knowing what to do and knowing what way to go. Let me introduce myself first. Rodriguez already mentioned it. I'm working at BouwhulpGroep. It's an architect firm, and we have done a lot of renovations during the last 40 years. But I'm also a professor of applied science at Rotterdam University, and I'm looking at how to renovate whole cities. And if I look at that perspective, it's good to see that all those researchers, and not only the 2 presentations that were going on today, but also the other papers that were presented in the Urban Planning Platform, all start with looking at how to cooperate with people. Because I think renovation is a multi-systematic, needs a multi-systematic approach. And not all, but a lot of other researchers are looking at just the technique and taking technique as a starting point. But it's always about, in the end, getting towards people, ringing at their doors to change something in their home. And how do people know what they should do or want to do or have to do towards 2050? And we, as all experts on renovation or building, are mainly focusing at doing that on a systematic and on a technical approach. But the real experts of their homes, they are living there. That are the people that are living in their homes, only they do not know that they are their experts. So we need to help them with making sure what their qualities are, what their needs are, and making sure that people are getting from unaware of their situation towards aware of their situation. And that means that on a larger scale, we need to tell people what qualities are, how they can look at their qualities. And I think the comfort tool presented by Ermal is one of those aspects. But we need also to show people what the flaws of their building are, but also what the opportunities of their building are. Because if you want to live at a certain place, it's good to see that you can adapt your building towards your wishes. And a lot of people are doing that on the inside. They need a new bathroom, they need a new kitchen. That are things that they want to think about. There are things that they are also doing. But what about energy efficiency? It's always, and most of the times, it's put up from above, from the municipality, from the local government or the national government, and even that from the EU government. But we need to show people that those measures go hand in hand. And when you can show them what maintenance can do, and you can show them what bringing better insulation, what that does to your living comfort, I think people can more easily go into renovations. And Tineke mentioned that in her introduction, that we have a lot of different people living in their homes. We have the tenants, and with the tenants, we have a housing association or an organization that does the planning and tries to think forward. But we also have a large part of home owners that are not as educated and do not know what to do and do not have a plan for their homes. So how can we reach all those people with all those buildings in a way before 2050 to change their homes? But it's not necessary to make a real large difference between those people, because in the end, a housing association or a homeowner still have the same buildings and still can do the same, can use the same solutions in their home. So the actual approach will not be as different as you think, because a lot of homes look the same, and you can apply the same solutions to those buildings. The only way to really look at them is to get people involved. And in the last presentation by Frans, he already mentioned that by grouping people or searching for the collective, it will be more easy to reach out to those people. Because which homeowner wants to do the whole process of getting a design and using all the equipment on its own? If there is a collective and people are doing it together within a association or in a group, it's more easy to follow that customer journey. So the use of those collectives, I think it's a very a good way to start the customer journey of renovation of your home. On the other hand, what you see is that a lot of those collectives are in place. They are advising people. They are showing people what can be improved on their homes. But often those organizations started as a volunteered committee, and one way or the other, some expert help will be needed to reach the next step in it. I think that using the starting point of a collective approach is one of the solutions towards the all-scale upscaling of that renovation. And in one EU project, it's the Horizon 2020 project we're doing in Rotterdam and Valencia, we are using a one-stop shop and a collective organization in the neighborhood to function as a one-stop shop and to organize those people in a collective. And they are now doing their first project, but they're looking for how to come to upscaling, because now it's just about 10 buildings, but how can you do 500 or how can you do 1,000 buildings in a city year after year after year? But it's a start. It's a good organization. It's a good way to organize people, and it's a good way to reach out to people, because you're very trustworthy as a local organization. You are more trusted than some government organization or the municipality who tells you what to do. It's about your neighbor who tells you what he has done to his building, or you can walk to the next street and you can see the example as an ambassador to what even is possible for you. So when you look at all the papers that were written in this within this urban planning platform, with the occupant as a starting point, I think it should be the standard. I think all technical approaches should start with, how do people look at this? How do people look at the solution? How can we, in the end, if we thought about something very unique and very technical to improve the energy efficiency of a building, but how do people look at it? Why do they want to buy it? Why do they want to sell it? And do they do that on their own, or do they do that in a group? Because if they're acting in a group, they can influence each other on what is good and what is not good for their buildings. And then also new ideas will come above. Oh, you are doing that solution. Well, I'm considering another solution. So I think with designing that customer journey, all those papers that are in the journal have a little aspect that can help us to come towards that upscaling of renovation. Because again, it's a very difficult task. It's not only about technicalities. It's not only about people who are living there. It's also about getting all those things together. People who are willing, people who are able to pay for it, contractors that have solutions that will suit the people. But if the contractors have those solutions, will they also make it available for individual house owners, or will they only work for housing associations and large contractors? And again, that's one of those aspects that the collectivity approach has, or the energy community has. You are when you are a collective, you have another business proposal for a contractor, and they are more keen to help you on your way, especially in a market just as this moment is. So again, building and renovation, I think it's a very complex situation, and again, I'm very glad to hear that all those remarks that people made and all those articles that were written are now from the occupants' point of view, because in the end, that's what you are doing it for. We're not doing it because we have to fulfill a task towards 2050. It's about people still living in their homes and still able to pay for the bills for their homes and to live there with in a very happy way. And of course, we built a lot of new homes for people that are needed a lot. But don't forget that in the end, for every new built home, 7 homes a day need to be renovated, and that renovation task is much larger than the new build task. And we have to get all those people that are living there now. We have to get them involved in making the right choices at this moment, but even in the future, because it's not always possible to do all the renovations at one time. And I think that especially homeowners will do it step by step on a moment that they want to do it, but they have to be provided with good solutions, with good knowledge, and with a good insight in how they can improve their home and their quality of living. And I think that's a large task that's ahead of us. But with the extra knowledge gained and with the input of these articles, perhaps we have made a small step again, and we have some 30 years to go to reach our goal. I will leave it by that, Rodriguez. Perhaps there are some questions in the chat to me or to the other speakers as well.
Perfect. Exactly. Thank you very much, Haico, for your comments on the issue, on the articles. I will give both Frans and Ermal a chance to address some of your comments too, but I think first I will read some of the questions that the audience has written to our speakers. I will perhaps start balancing everything here. A question to Ermal by Stella Boss. She says, dear Ermal, great presentation and tool. Question, does it mean intuitive controls are less important?
Sort of. So what it means that they are less important than the other factors that the inhabitants, on average, see as important in their home, related to comfort in their home. That said, if I can very quickly share my screen again. Yeah, so I think it's here that you are. That you mean. There's the intuitive controls is at the very bottom of the list. That said, it's still above an average of 3. The average is above 3, and 3 was the sort of the neutral point. So 1 being not at all important, 5 being very important, number 3 was sort of somewhat important. So there is still an importance to it, and I think what is maybe even another key point is that when you look at the improvement potential, it's not actually at the bottom anymore, because the current performance of this item for people is actually even lower than they would expect. So they still would like to improve this aspect of the home. But what you can also see from this graph is the spread, in fact. So the lines indicate the 50 percentile, which means that the scores, so that basically means that there's a huge variety in how different people would rate the same indicator in terms of how important it is to them, but also in terms of how well their home performs. And that's, I think, maybe the biggest takeaway from the research that we did is a variety of answers that you can have even on identical homes, because part of the equation, 1/2 of the equation is the person, only half of it is the house itself. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Ermal, for addressing this question. We have received also a question by, let me open here, by James Kungu. He's not able to be with us here today, but he made us a question. Perhaps, Tineke, I will give this one to you, but the remaining speakers, or Haico, or any of the authors, if you want to step in. James Kungu asked if we could talk a bit about the funding aspects of zero energy renovation in developing countries. And I would like to ask Frans and to bring a bit more about this, about differences in developed and developing countries in terms of funding, technology access, citizen involvement. Is there anything, Tineke, that you can reveal to us?
That is a very interesting question. I must say that we did not receive any contributions from researchers in developing countries, but I know, of course, that there has been done research on this, and the problems are, as far as I remember from those articles, they are similar. Inhabitants of buildings have just the same problems. Maybe in some cases the problems are more difficult, or the buildings are worse, or the electricity network is not working as we are used to here in the Netherlands. As regarding funding, I must say that is out of my expertise. We did not, the question of funding is not one of the issues that was discussed in this special issue, I have to say.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Tineke, for addressing this issue. If later on any of the speakers would like to add on something, do feel free to interrupt me and do so. I'm going to read back to you, Ermal, a question by Matthias Holler. So the question reads, you mentioned that your article concerns the communication between homeowners and professionals. Is there any country where this communication, this bridge between homeowners and professionals has better results in homes renovation?
Thank you, Matthias. I think it's to specify, to make it a bit more clear. It's about improving the communication between the homeowners and the professionals in terms of what is a priority for the homeowners in a way that is also related to sustainable renovations. So it's actually about, in the end, putting words, giving a language, giving a topic of discussion to the homeowner, giving them a question that they can ask to giving them the right questions to that they can ask to the professionals. And I think it was Louis Kahn that said that you cannot have a good building without a good client, and that is effectively the root of the comfort tool. So that's its purpose, is to try and make a slightly better client. And whether I know of other places where this has been done more successfully, I am not aware of similar situations. So one other aspect of this kind of research is that it applies mostly to places where you have owner occupiers, and these in large numbers, and that means that you are basically speaking about countries like Belgium, the UK, the US, Canada, sort of these areas. It wouldn't apply as much in the Netherlands. It would not apply as much in a limited amount as well, but less so in the Netherlands, and less so in, for example, in Germany, where the rent levels are much higher. And the other item is that these are people that, what you see in Netherlands, in Belgium, is that you have a lot of people, not just that they own their own homes, but they build their own homes. In Belgium, they say that people are born with Belgians are born with a brick in their stomach. And the idea is that they always just want to build their own self-standing home, which means that you have a lot of freedom in what to do. And that's where you also have the most power, let's say, as a professional, to intervene when you have this kind of client, when you can do that. If you're renovating an apartment in an apartment building, as an architect, there's only so far you can go. You can do certain things, but you cannot push it as far as if you're just designing a whole new home or renovating a whole new home that is independent. So I think if it doesn't happen in Belgium, it's less likely for it to happen elsewhere. And I think the clients, in my experience, I'm Canadian by origin. I've worked in several countries around the world. I've lived in the Netherlands as well, in Germany, Korea even, and I haven't seen architects being any more involved than I've seen them be here. So it's an opinion, but I don't imagine that it is better elsewhere.
Thank you, Ermal, for addressing this question by Matthias. I'm going to Haico now. We have a question for you by Stella Boss again. Stella says, thanks, Tineke, for organizing, and Haico for the interesting talk. A question for Haico. Do all those 7 renovations have to be zero energy, and by when, realistically? Private homeowners mostly do very minimal renovations. Haico, what can you reveal to us about this?
First, yes, private homeowners do very less renovations. But that's also because they do not know what they can do and what they should do. I think that what they should do should be more be highlighted by the government to what goals there are. But to address your question, should they all be net zero? I don't think that's quite possible. Of course, we have a huge task to reduce CO2 in all the sectors, and the building sector is one of those sectors. And we have to do the best we can, and to build homes that are using no natural resources, and to make them as efficient as possible. But to make all buildings net zero, I think it will be very costly. I think it will be very opportune to say so that it will that we can do it before 2050. But that doesn't mean that we do not have to do anything. We have to look at what is possible within needs, and perhaps some restrictions are needed by the government. In the Netherlands, for example, there are now in 2026 there are some regulations about the kind of installation you have to put in your building. And I think that kind of measures will put people on the right track to do something about their home. With all those steps on installation, on redesigning your building and thinking about your building, we can make buildings as good as possible. Net zero for every building, I think it's a kind of utopia. But we have to make sure we get as far as we can, and with that in mind, we step after step we have to do so. And 2050 is a good point to keep in view, and perhaps earlier. But I think the rhythm of the building depends on when to do and what to do.
Thank you, Haico, for addressing Stella's question. We are more or less in the end of the webinar, but I would like to give both Frans and Ermal just a chance to very briefly address the remarks provided by Haico to your articles. Perhaps Frans, I don't know if you want to go first.
Okay, yeah, just a short remark about what Haico said about collectively. Yeah, it's quite clear if you look at our experience with community energy and local energy communities. Everybody thinks about groups of people led by volunteers with limited time, not necessarily limited knowledge, but and of course that actually is true. That might be a problem for any collectivity of tenants or house owners trying to organize them themselves. At the other side, what the argument that we make in the paper, and I didn't put so much in the presentation, is that most of these local energy communities are not only well built into the community as a whole, but also are very well networked with other actors that actually can help them, with municipalities, with housing corporations, with project developers, etc., or maybe even outside of their direct community. So so this apart from the knowledge, this way of collectively getting organized is also very interesting for these other actors. They don't have to deal with individuals; they can deal with a collectivity that actually, I think, will improve the work in this type of projects.
That means that a whole network in a city will emerge, and within that network, all those organizations or sub-organizations can function as a village or as a municipality.
Yeah, but with the obvious advantage that it's communities that are really part of the community, that are trusted, accepted. It makes things easier than project organizations coming from the outside, or that might be more, like you said, might be more distrusted by the citizens, and there's an advantage and a disadvantage to that. But of course, your remark that professionality, of course, comes also with time that you can spend on a project, and working with a lot of volunteers is a potential downside of this connectivity. Yeah, that's clear. Yeah.
Thank you, Frans. Ermal, would you like a couple of questions to also address some of the remarks?
Yeah, well, I think actually the questions that came before sort of rounded up already a bit the comments that I would have made, which is, well, the first is this idea. I think Haico said correctly that there is I think in renovating a whole city, it makes it impossible to do such a renovation without really going to the people. You have people who live in it, and whether they are homeowners or renters or whatever, they, at least in this country, a democratic country, you kind of have to get them involved. And even when you have, as they are discussing now in Brussels, to have a law that you must renovate your home if it's below a certain energy level, no matter what, you have to renovate by 2025, I think is the idea at the moment. They're discussing it. There are other problems with that. There's no labor to do it. There's no the people to even just estimate what is your current energy performance of all the houses in Brussels. There's not enough people to do that. So in order to achieve this, that you need to create a market. First of all, there needs to be a demand, and the demand comes from the individuals, the private homeowners, I think less this case of renters, because they are less likely to invest. But I think going to the people, and I think that's where the conflict tool, of course, is aimed at, is key, and that is, yeah. The other aspect of it is to say that, despite that, you cannot discount the role of the professionals. At the end of the day, it is the professional who gives an appropriate answer to the question of the client, and of the whether that's again a professional client or a renter or a homeowner. It is the professionals that need to have both the incentive and the knowledge to give the right answer. So you see too many times now where architects will simply say, with the greenwashing, they'll just ignore sustainability in general, because anyway, it's a house, who cares? I get paid 5% of the value of this project, and I don't have time to deal with this detail. So that's another aspect that I think also needs fixing, but that's a different discussion, and my expertise is beyond that point. But so it's just to say that we have to address both sides of the equation, and we can't skip the people to begin with.
Well, I think that you're completely right to say that a new market needs to emerge, and on the one side and now there's sometimes some kind like a void. The professionals are not presenting solutions for individual homeowners, because it's a very diffuse market, and they do not know what to present, and the homeowners do not know what to ask, because they're just living there and are not quite up to speed to all their solutions. So in that case, something like your comfort tool can help to discuss what's needed, and help as well the occupants as the professional market in providing solutions and asking for those solutions, and then hopefully a market will emerge. So I wish you good luck in further development of the tool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ermal and Haico as well. We have now reached the end of our webinar. Just two final notes before we close the session. The first one is that the issue which this event was based on is available in Urban Planning website. I'm going to share the link with you all again. As always, it's open access anytime, anywhere. The second note, this webinar was recorded, and a final version of the video will be available on our YouTube channel very soon. Both the speakers and the attendees will be notified once the video is on. I would like to thank the speakers. Tineke, thank you for your help organizing and putting up this event. Frans and Ermal for sharing your research, and of course to Haico for your comments and remarks on the collection. I would also like to thank the attendees for being here today and for your understanding of the reschedule of the event, and also for your questions and for interacting with our speakers. I will see you all in our next webinar. Thank you very much.